Hello, greetings, good morning or good night from wherever you're at. Uh, I'm just gonna jump into this since I don't really have a script for this. The only thing, no joke, that I have is just like a document of notes that I've taken over time. Since trying to figure out everything for this timeline was such a hassle, not in a bad way, in an interesting way, honestly. Like every time I was able to connect the dots to something, or at least I think I was able to connect the dots to something, I got really excited. So, in the background of this video, you will also be able to see that I'm doing a speed paint that I did for this video. I decided to draw almost all of the Welcome to Dreamworld characters. I was going to draw the three triplets, but I was running low on time and I did have finals this past month, so this was sort of rushed, so sorry if it's not the best. At the end, I'll show a moment for the full drawing so you'll be able to see it. If I do post this, I will also link the post down below. Anyways, let's jump right into this. Sorry if I'm saying this wrong, but throughout the series, I've heard them say litho and litho. I'm personally like saying litho better, so that's what I'm going to be saying throughout this whole video. We first start off with Litho in his era, which started way back in the 1800s. Yeah, we're going that far back. Litho's actual name is Edmund, and he had a brother named Agnes, the two originally starting off as humans. The two of them both had a similar goal, to search out and look for immortality. And to try and find this, they ended up searching all over, as much as they could. But, as expected, it didn't really go anywhere. Immortality is a thing that many people try to search for, and it isn't really something that seems achievable. However, despite this fact, they actually started to find a way to get immortality. Introducing Xavier. Xavier is a being from the Great Traveler's World, a place where people are able to travel with the power of soul essence. What is soul essence, actually? Soul essence essentially is just the pieces and bits that come from a human soul. A human soul is a very core being of what you are. You see, without a soul, you wouldn't be a person, you wouldn't be alive. Your body is simply like a vessel, if anything. Your soul is who you truly are. This is very important for Welcome to Dreamworld, so keep this in the back of your mind. Soul essence is also the parts of the soul that can assist in bringing things back to life. Reincarnation, in a sense. So, when Edmund and Agnes met Xavier, Xavier was honestly a bit overthrilled to share his info with them. Finally, he'd be able to tell someone other than the Great Travelers about their discoveries. And the two brothers really seemed like they wanted to know this information, since they were looking for immortality or something to do with soul essence. He thought that giving them this information would be the best way to go. However, this turns out to be a very bad decision. When Edmund was told about the soul essence, it gave him an enlightenment, another chance to be able to achieve what he wants, another chance at achieving what he so desired, what he wanted, what him and his brother wanted. But Xavier quickly went against his attempts, stating that the Great Travelers would be angered by his attempts. He even denied Edmund of even more information that he possibly could have. But despite these warnings, Edmund continued in his work. He wasn't going to let some great traveler stop him from what he wanted to achieve. Him and his brother continued to work in this field of trying to achieve immortality. And while Agnes was very happy to be able to help his brother, things quickly went downhill yet again. Edmund planned to use the soul essence to make a gateway, a portal, something that would help them actually achieve what they wanted to get. But just like almost any person, when Agnes heard about this, he immediately went against it. He was all up for helping his brother with this plan, but it wasn't going to happen like this. Not if they had to hurt people or take their souls just to do it. What I believe happened next was a fight. Think of like that moment in Gravity Falls when the two brothers stand, and I forgot the other person's name. Forgive me. When they make that like portal and they're yelling at Mabel to push the button. Think of it like that. The gateway was already in some sort of process of being made. Litho was almost there at making it, and his brother going against him was probably the worst thing that could have happened in that moment, because during the fight, the two would have fell right into the gateway. Think about it. It would explain why Litho was sent to another dimension, why Litho was able to even get to Allison in the first place. But we end up finding out later that Agnes is stuck within the collector. So I believe that when they both got pushed into this gateway, only Litho came out intact. Agnes, however, was probably damaged in the soul, similar to how Ribbon Dancer is. Maybe not so damaged to where he wasn't there anymore, but damaged enough that he wasn't physically there anymore. Possibly distraught? Who even knows? Litho kept this part of his brother with him as he entered this new dimension. No, this couldn't be it. This couldn't be the end of his gateway. He worked so hard to get this gateway. He worked so long to get this gateway. They finally was about to get one, and he did. It was right in front of him. And there was no way he was going to let it end here. So he didn't. Enter in Allison. Now, this is a bit more messy. I don't have everything put together since we don't see too much of Allison's past life. But we do see enough to where I sort of piece it together a little bit. I'm led to believe that Allison's mother was possibly one of the first victims that Litho aimed towards. Or should I say vessel? You see, Litho seems to possess different vessels over time. You could count Sarah as one of them. You can even count Wyatt's dad as one of them. We'll get back to that. But while Allison was looking in the mirror, he was talking about the fact that his mother seemed to change and morph, and that wasn't his mother anymore. I'm led to believe that Litho did possess her body in some way. Possibly was trying to use her as a first sort of assistant to getting his gateway. And when that didn't go too well, he opted to working with Allison. Allison was a young little boy, so it would be easy to manipulate and use him. And that's exactly what Litho did. He used Allison's musical abilities to try and lure people in, try to gain their soul essence in some sort of way. But I feel like this didn't happen fast enough, or it was gradually getting there. But I believe that Allison eventually found out what exactly he was doing. We see the book that Allison walks away from when he goes to play with his friend. I forgot what exactly the title said, but I know it said Essence on it. I'll flash it up on the screen right now. And since Allison seems very much against Litho in the current present day, I would like to believe that after reading this book and getting himself educated, which Litho did give to him in the first place, he quickly saw the dangers of going down this path and turned on Litho. But then this brings up the question of how exactly did Allison die? Well, Allison is reported to be under the grounds of Welcome to DreamWorld's establishment for a very, very long time. Welcome to DreamWorld's establishment was built on top of a burnt down mansion that used to be there in the 1800s. Sound familiar at all? And I don't think the house just burnt down mysteriously. I do think that Litho was the one to burn it down. And Allison additionally reports that his childhood was taken away, possibly both by the fact that he had to help Litho for so long and by the fact that he died so early. He does come back as a ghost as his child self and not an adult self. And don't just take my word for it. It also says this within the wiki. In the website secrets portion, it says, according to one of the reporters, the facility was built on top of an old family manor. Apparently, the manor was well known, since it supposedly had a famous composers and violinist. However, it had been burnt down to the ground. After it had been burnt, an unknown company director had purchased it and transformed it into a large warehouse. This warehouse would be the one that was won by Lewis, Oliver, and Sarah as their prize for winning a competition, and would be transformed into DreamWorld Entertainment. This is no coincidence whatsoever. Some mysterious director bought the place. Come on. On top of this, the fact that Sarah won that area is no coincidence either. In fact, we're led to believe that Litho has been following Sarah ever since she was a little child. Flashback to when Sarah used to be in elementary school. She already had a troubling life, and it didn't help that the fact that she constantly got bullied. One day, she was chased down by her bullies within the forest. Chased and chased and chased until she couldn't run anymore. Finding themselves at a cliff, she had to make the hard decision to push them off, and she ran away, hoping to forget about what she just did. But she couldn't. She just couldn't. It's hard to forget when you end up ending the lives of your classmates, especially when they get interrogated, asking you about what you did, what happened. Of course, she said that she didn't know, but the guilt still followed. During the interview, Sarah states that she saw a rabbit and decided to follow it. But she says that the rabbit had many eyes, or the thing had many eyes, and rabbits don't have that many eyes. What else has been reported to have many multiple eyes? Litho. I don't exactly remember if Sarah states that the eyes were red, but the multiple eyes on an animal seems to point all the way to Litho. There's also a point at the end of the interview when Sarah is starting to lose her mind or saying, I didn't do it, and a bunch of eyes, red eyes, pop up above her. The same red eyes that we see in one of the later episodes when Litho is trying to keep Wyatt and Starlight within the establishment, trying to prevent them from leaving. The red eyes are all on the walls, on Sarah herself. And we know that Sarah is being possessed by Litho at that point. So the fact that we've seen multiple occasions where people have had red eyes around them or red eyes on them seems to all point towards Litho possessing them or being in their facility or around them in general. Again, this will come up when we talk about Wyatt's dad. Time skip to high school period. This is when Sarah ended up meeting Lewis and Oliver. She also met Eric Gale, who is a very important character in this series and, fun fact, is my favorite character. I really like Ribbon Dancer. But at this time, Eric Gale was their teacher. He even speaks about this in the secret tapes where he ends up saying, I think on his 20th birthday or 25th birthday, that he met these kids in his work. How they all seemed so talented and so smart and so driven to achieve what they wanted to achieve. He's also reported to help them in the future when they actually have the establishment. Eventually, the three end up winning a contest, officially setting off their plans to start the business. Again, I don't think this was a coincidence at all. I'm pretty sure that this was all set up by Litho, the fact that he wanted them to win that area specifically. The people who gave them that area was Watchful Eye Toys, which I'm pretty sure has been confirmed in the series. If not, it's more so speculation and sort of points to Litho. But Litho is the owner of that company. I think also the fact in the more recent episode where we got season 2's trailer, the fact that Sarah Litho, Lithera, I think Lithera is pretty cool, told Norman to stick to the script and got progressively mad at him. I do believe that Litho is the owner of the establishment of the Watchful Eye Toys. Anyways, before they end up going to start their business, Lewis has a chat with Wyatt. In one of the clips, we end up seeing Wyatt and Lewis talk to each other. Lewis is telling Wyatt about how he can't stay with him anymore, that he has to move away in order to complete what he wants to do. Despite the sadness, the conversation goes pretty well. However, an agreement was made that if Lewis stopped replying, Wyatt would come to find him. Put a pin in that for later. And at last, that marks it off. The three of them moved to Ohio and they ended up making their company. Oliver was in charge of the technical works primarily. Lewis was more in charge of the designs and the more, layout of the building. Correction here, he was actually in charge of making the robots. Also in the chat with Wyatt, he talked about how he's more better at robots and not good with technology. And Sarah was like the head honcho of it all. Now, as for how exactly Litho gets entered into all of this, Lewis ends up reporting that Sarah started to change all of a sudden, that she wasn't always like this. So clearly Litho's influence wasn't there until a certain period of time. Whenever anybody opens a business or establishment, the start off is pretty rocky. Maybe the animatronics weren't as lively, they just weren't that good to their degree that they wanted. Maybe no one was really seeing their business or wasn't really coming there because it didn't seem official enough. A lot of things could have pointed to the fact that Sarah would be stressed over all of this. And this is when Litho finally strikes. I can't say exactly what happened between them, but I feel like the two of them ended up having some sort of chat about possibly immortality and a way to help the business. Sarah seems to still have that guilt of the fact that she killed those 3 students in her class. Even while talking to a therapist about it, it never really seemed to help. It always was in the back of her mind. This could be a chance for Litho to bring up the fact that they can achieve immortality. The fact that the 3 of them could end up preserving life while also having their business be successful. Sarah quickly shifts into trying to achieve immortality instead of fully focusing on the establishment. But just because she was focusing on being able to preserve life, that doesn't mean she was ignoring her work. Rather, she was using her work to help her achieve this. I know that Lewis is said to be one of the first souls stuffed into the animatronic, but I don't believe this is fully true. They did say they had around 5 animatronics that were removed from the cast since they didn't really go that well. And Sarah ended up being more surprised at the fact that they were killing people in order to put them into these bodies or into these animatronics. So then the question comes up, how did she get sold on this? Because if she didn't know that they were going to kill people to get their souls, then why would she even agree to this in the first place? In episode 13, we end up seeing that Nightlight, Lorenzo, and I think Millie and Gruff are with this child. Forgive me, I forgot the name. And they all seem very lively. And we all know that the only way that these animatronics are lively is when they have souls within their systems. The only other people that we have seen reported dead have been the 3 bullies that Sarah killed and Allison. In episode 9, Nightlight also shows a picture of her with her friends. Now, I'm not sure if Nightlight is one of the bullies or was one of the bullies, but I do think there's some sort of connection here. In the picture of her friends, there were 3 people. Are you connecting the dots? It would make a lot of sense for Litho to suggest that they put those 3 kids' souls into these bodies. Because then what she did in the past wouldn't be so bad. In fact, she would actually be preserving those kids' lives. She would be helping them. And once they pulled a few strings, got the souls, and put them into the animatronics, they saw how it worked. I think that everything went, well. I feel like at that point, that's when Sarah was finally on board with Litho and his plan. She was finally ready to try and preserve life. Okay, we're going to start off this section with being a little bit unsure. And this is more so full on a theory rather than being confirmed by any outside source, anything from the videos or from the wiki. There was an incident that caused the facility to shut down for a little while. I think that maybe because she put these souls into the bodies of the animatronics, that something went wrong during the opening day, which could be why they closed down for a little while. But honestly, I'm not too sure about that. Since we do see that Alyssa and Mike are working at the facility at some point and those people are stuck into the bodies, but the incident could have happened and then they reopened and then they eventually got people there over time. So we'll put a pin in that, but, just consider it. Over time, Sarah just begins to change and shift her focus more to immortality rather than the establishments and even her friends, gradually causing her to push her friends away. And of course, Lewis and Oliver noticed this, or at least mainly Lewis. And Lewis was very vocal about it. In episode 4, we end up seeing the discussion happening between Lewis, Oliver, and Sarah. Sarah ended up proposing the idea of creating immortality to the other 2. And as you expected, this did not go well. Lewis thought that Sarah was crazy for trying to even do something like this. Immortality wasn't real. It couldn't be something they could achieve. You can't preserve life like that. What was she thinking? They were supposed to be focused on their establishment. Why in the world was she shifting her focus to preserving souls? But Sarah saw this more as him going against her rather than him trying to be reasonable. They asked for Oliver's input, but Oliver doesn't say much on the matter. It seems pretty common for Oliver to be pretty silent within these situations. I know it's hinted at the fact when Sarah says,
Didn't you say that you always wanted to be a star?
That she possibly killed Lewis right there and then, but I don't think this is what happened. There's a chat that Sarah ends up happening in later episodes when she's talking to Litho over the phone, or I think it's Whinny, or it's both, one of the two. She's talking to one of the two and ends up saying, how in the world is she supposed to get another soul to put into an animatronics, since Litho seems to be requesting for that. That's when Lewis appears. I feel like this is when she officially kills Lewis. I still question why she wanted to take him down out of everyone. Maybe it's because Lewis was already pushing her buttons and sort of getting in the way. Or just the fact that he was there at the wrong time. But hey, there is a few cracks in what I'm claiming. Lewis says that he died by a rogue animatronic. And I know that they are able to sort of mess with the memories of the souls, but I still don't think he's lying. Sarah could have easily gotten Whinny to come in and kill Lewis. It could be the reason why Lewis would end up remembering dying by a rogue animatronic rather than dying by Sarah. This would also make it a little bit harder for Lewis to point at the fact that Sarah was the one that killed him. Because why would you want him to remember that? They always tried very hard to make sure that the animatronics never remembered what happened, or how exactly they died, or who they died from. Even though these efforts didn't really go that far, they still made the effort to do so. So, having Whinny to be the one to kill him would end up making him remember it as Whinny killing him, or a rogue animatronic. Besides, I think the Whinny bot was reported to have some complications with it already. We do see Eric come in at a later episode checking up on the Whinny bot as request of Lewis, so the fact that Whinny was already acting up at the time would make a lot of sense. Also, in addition, I think the reason why Whinny was acting up is because of Litho. Possibly Litho was already trying to mess with the animatronic, but that is severely up for debate. And thus, this marks the first death of Welcome to Dreamworld. Next runner-up is Eric. I believe that Eric was the second one to die. I'm not sure if this is confirmed, but it seems generally accepted by the fandom. Eric ends up dying after he goes to Lewis's place when he was requested by Lewis to get some papers for him, or just to get some old files. I'm like to believe that this actually wasn't really Lewis who went to go request for him. I think it was either Sarah or Litho that sent some sort of message to him. Actually, definitely was Litho, because Sarah didn't even know that Eric had died until they told her. I believe that this happened after the checkup with Whinny as well, obviously, because he was still alive at that point. When inside of the house, he knocks on the door, screaming at Sarah saying, "I know that you're the one who did this," or assuming that it was her, or thinking that it's her at least. So it seems like Eric was catching on in some way, and the fact that he was catching on probably would have damaged Sarah, or more so Litho's plans. And since they wanted to get more souls to preserve inside of the animatronics, what better to do than to take out Eric? I do think that Litho assumed that the fire wouldn't have damaged his soul so badly, but he possibly damaged it a little bit too much to the point where when putting it inside of the body, it caused some sort of malfunction in a sense, or something new to happen. Because in a later episode, Ribbon Dancer ends up telling Lewis that he's not Eric. Eric is still there, don't get me wrong, but he's not Eric. Eric and him have sort of been working together. So whenever the two of them switch, it is still like a fritz that happens inside of the machine. But they aren't the same person. It's not like he's switching back into consciousness. It's more so that they're swapping out places. Another thing that Eric says in the video, when you look at the old files, that also has the video where he talks about working at the school, he ends up mentioning something interesting. He said, "to future me." Now, this could just be the fact that he always does this in all of his recordings, so it could just be a force of habit. But this also could point to the fact that he knows about what Sarah and Litho are trying to do, or at least he's hinting towards knowing. Maybe he had some sort of hunch that he would see this video in a later date, or that somehow this would come back to him and he would end up being able to remember. So saying "to future me" would just assume the fact that he would come back. But alas, that ends off the Eric era. That's where he dies and ends up getting put into the animatronic now known as Ribbon Dancer. Next up would be Alyssa and Mike. Alyssa and Mike originally show up in the episode 8, where the two of them are talking at the establishment. Alyssa approaches Mike since she hadn't really seen him there before. Having a bit of a chat, Mike ends up mentioning the fact that he got kicked out of his house recently, and that's the whole reason why he's working at DREAMWORLD. The reasons for him getting kicked out of his house, well, let's just say his family wasn't as approving of his new identity. As someone also under the umbrella, I feel a lot of empathy for him. And so does Alyssa, actually. She ends up offering him a place to stay at her house. And it is assumed that the two of them end up spending some time together and just end up living in the same apartment for a little while. Now, what importance does this have? Well, Alyssa and Mike would be the next two souls stuffed into the animatronics, Glory and Rex. Near the end of the conversation with these two, Alyssa ends up saying this with a quick flash of a picture of Mike on the floor. Let me play it real quick. I have a feeling that this scene is hinting towards the fact that Rex says that he died by a trash compactor. Also, trash compactors are more commonly found at establishments that end up having a bunch of trash. Things like Dave & Buster's or Chuck E. Cheese. And Welcome to Dreamworld would be right under that radar. With Mike working there, it would be pretty easy for Litho to end up killing Mike with a trash compactor. Right after Mike, I would believe that the three triplets were the next up to die. Now, you might question why it wouldn't be Alyssa right after the fact. Well, there's a lot of reasons pointing as to why she wouldn't have been dead yet. There was a time period in between when Rex was at the establishment and when Glory appeared at the establishment. That time period was 3 weeks. In episode 6, there's 2 very important events that happen. First was the event with the 3 lost children. Each child ends up stating a few things, like who's their favorite animatronic and who is a better animatronic compared to everybody else. Same type of banter that any 8-year-old children would end up having. But with all of the stalling and the fact that they stayed there for so long and the fact that they were lost, led to their deaths. When the child who admired Cheer stood up, stating that they wanted to be as strong and brave as Cheer, it cuts to the 2 children looking at them mortified. We see that Whinny is right behind them and swiftly kills them, hinting towards the fact that he also killed the other 2 children. Actually, scratch that, not even hinting, because the next scene that we see is with a phone call with Sarah. Sarah's last phone call, actually. Sarah's shouting about the fact that Whinny ended up killing 3 children for apparently no reason. Why did they have to kill more people when they were trying to preserve life? This is also when Whinny ends up revealing that there wasn't just one murder. Lewis wasn't the only person they took out. No. He reveals that the fact that he killed Eric got a little bit too close to the truth, so he had to take him down. And then he killed Mike, or rather stated as that one worker at the establishment.
Wait, you thought there was only one murder?
Yes, of course Whinny?
Sarah?
What did you do?
What? Eric got too close to finding out what you did to Lewis, so I burnt his house down and trapped him in the fire. I took his soul, grabbed his body, and ran. Same with that one employee that Elijah's always talking to. He got too close to the truth, so I crushed him in a trash compactor. Both bodies are in the basement, so you can restore them and keep them with Lewis for...
For what? More experiments? More secrets? More murders?
Yes! Earth to Sarah, this is what you signed up for. This is what we agreed upon when you signed Litho's contract.
This also makes me believe that the 3 triplets did die before Glory as well, since there's been no mentions of the fact that Glory or anybody else had died during this call. Whinny would have mentioned the fact that he killed more people on top of that. Additionally, this marks when Sarah was officially pushed out of her body, or at least no longer in control. We have no idea if Sarah is still there or even is conscious at all or has died at this point, but Litho seems to take over her body. Sarah's no longer in control. Sarah's no longer here. There's no getting to her, as far as we know. This is also where everything takes a turning point for the worse. Around this time, I would also like to believe that this is when Oliver ended up raising his suspicions. More and more people were going missing at a rapid rate. Sure, Lewis went missing a while back, but even with that, there was only a little bit of suspicions. But the fact that Eric, 3 children, and one of their employees went missing, there's been more reports of missing children and just missing people in general. I feel like this is when Oliver started questioning this more and more. He already was questioning that Sarah was changing, just noticing the fact that she wasn't really herself. But the fact that his colleague went missing, his old teacher went missing, and just more people were gradually dropping, he had to raise some suspicions at this point. Litho also states that he should have got rid of Oliver when he had the chance, or the fact that he was catching on a little bit too much, and he was being a little bit too lenient with him. But Oliver doesn't die yet at this point. He's just raising some suspicions, and possibly trying to figure out what exactly is happening. This is when Oliver talks to that detective that he totally isn't gay with, and tries to figure out what exactly is happening with the establishment. This could answer on to why Oliver wasn't really working there anymore, or didn't really appear as much. Since it seems like none of the workers really know any of the other 3 founders apart from Sarah. They know about Lewis and they know about Oliver, but they don't really see them around the establishment as much as they see Sarah. At this point, there has been 6 deaths of Welcome to DREAMWORLD. This next part, I'm a little bit iffy on, since I'm not really sure which order it should go. But we're going to go with the theory that Alyssa dies next. There wasn't many reports or clips in the episodes showing the fact of Glory being around with Cheer, or being around before Cheer, or Cheer being around before Glory. We just know that the 2 of them died at some point. And sort of the fact that we don't see Alyssa around at all when Carly ends up appearing and looking for her dad, it leads me to believe that Alyssa was already dead at this point, but not fully sure. But to me, I really do feel like Alyssa died first, and then it was Cheer. As for how Alyssa died, I have no clue. Alyssa never really says anything about her death. She just says that she remembers dying and just appeared there in this animatronic body. Both the wiki and the episodes also don't really talk about how exactly she died. The wiki seems to be completely clueless on this fact, and the episodes, despite watching them multiple times, I have not been able to find out how Alyssa died. So for now, we're just going to state the fact that she died, just in general. I know, anticlimactic, but still, without any full-on evidence, I don't want to make any claims, especially since we don't have any pointers to how exactly she would have died or any hints towards what could have killed her, apart from the fact that most likely Whinny and Litho killed her. Next up is Carly, or Cheer. I don't think there needs to be much explanation for this one. In the Dream World intermission episode, we end up seeing exactly how Carly ends up dying. Let me just give a brief explanation of what happens in an episode. We end up seeing this note when Oliver goes searching for the papers or something that Sarah sent him to go get. I'm assuming that this is the first time that Carly tried to reach out and see if she could find her dad, or if they could just bring her dad back or had some sort of pointers. Over time, it seems like she got all fed up with the fact that nobody was giving her answers, so she went to the establishment herself. Litho definitely knew that this was going to happen at some point. In fact, maybe he even planned for this to happen, because when she got there, they had a whole list of just rules and a whole scavenger hunt for her to do in order to find her dad. And it was all an elaborate trap. Despite the efforts of Star quickly trying to get her to the first floor, to the lobby where Rex would be, to escort her out, she ends up finding the door that says Star in here anyways. And this is when Whinny comes in and kills her. And last up, well, not really, but the last up out of the people who got put into the animatronics would be Lolly and Pop. This also doesn't need much explanation since we do see it actually happen in the episodes. In episode 5, Sarah is talking to the two children that have connections to Oliver. She wants to show them her new project and this new thing that would show what they're thinking in their mind. But there's a bit of a malfunction. We end up seeing a video of Star having two masks over his face. And despite this not being accurate to reality, this still happens. And while it's happening, the headset goes off the fritz and electrocutes the child, presumably killing him right there and then. Afterwards, Sarah claims how she really liked the two of them and didn't really want them to die. But she had to figure out some way to make this work. The other child was already dead. And plus, if she got those two dead, you would have two more souls to be put into the last animatronic. And that's exactly what ended up happening. The two of them died together and were swiftly put inside of the Lolly and Pop animatronic. This is also confirmed later when Lolly and Pop end up yelling at Oliver, or more so, Pop, who is yelling at Oliver saying, like, how do you know my name? How do you know these things? And doesn't believe that that's Oliver because of the virus, but it's pretty much confirmed with Oliver's flashback talking about how he took the two to haunted houses, that they're all related, and the fact that these two were definitely the two kids that Sarah took down to put into the Lolly and Pop animatronic. And that ends off all of the deaths. Or does it? No. We still have Oliver. Yes, I know Oliver is still alive, but he's technically in this dying state. And it did seem like Sarah had the intention of killing him. Because later on, Sarah, or Litho, ends up saying that they were surprised at the fact that Oliver was still alive and that they should have took him out when they had the chance. So I definitely feel like the TV head trap was set up to kill him. I mean, it did have broken glass, and Oliver does say in the video that could kill someone. She left him inside of that closet because, obviously, assuming that the TV head fell on him, would have believed that he would have been dead after that. And if it didn't kill him immediately, then it would gradually kill him. And last but not least, we have Wyatt. Wyatt, of course, didn't die. Wyatt is still alive. But we end up watching DreamWorld from Wyatt's perspective when he starts working there. I believe that Wyatt, after he graduated, ended up heading off to DreamWorld Entertainment in order to investigate what was going on. Additionally, he wanted to see if his suspicions were right. At this point in time, Lewis would have stopped replying, and Wyatt did say in previous episodes, and I mentioned this earlier, how he would come and find him if he stopped replying. Wyatt may have or may have not known that Lewis was Starlight at the very beginning, but at least had some sort of hunches towards it. And so this officially marks off the beginning of Wyatt working at Welcome to Dreamworld and trying to figure out what was happening. And that's everything. That's everything for the timeline that I ended up being able to piece together and figure out. I spent a small while being able to try and piece everything together from the wiki, videos, and just my own personal theories that I had as I was watching the episodes to try and piece everything together and see if I can get something out of this. I do hope that at least some or most of my points are correct, because I genuinely feel like this is basically how it happened, but for all I know, I could be completely wrong and it could go some other way. But I do have confidence in my theories. And that marks us off as everything. I would like to thank you guys for watching this video, anybody who decided to click on this and just view it at all. Rainbot, if you're watching this, I'm really a big fan of all of your work. It has inspired me to start working again on my own series and has just made me get back into this more mascot horror. I wish the viewers a nice day, morning, night, whatever time you're watching this, and a good luck to whoever else entered in this contest. Although I do have some minor theories that I also want to list off here that doesn't exactly go towards the timeline of everything, but just something I felt like I should mention. And some of these might be formatted in questions because it's more so me questioning and actually theorizing. The first one I want to start off with is that Whinny is Wyatt's grandfather. In the phone call yet again, they ended up mentioning the fact that his wife died and that his son died and that he has a grandson and his grandson is like going down like a bad path or something like that. Forgot what exactly they said, but you can go back to the clip that I played earlier or just go to the clip in the episode. But they ended up mentioning more about the fact that his wife died, that he has a son that ended up dying. Obviously, Whinny's real name is never really stated, but I do believe that he is in the bloodline of Wyatt. Celia was the therapist of Owen Nicholson, and in some of those drawings, we see that Owen was drawing pictures of the red eyes around him, the red eyes that is hinting towards Litho, and the fact that we saw a gravestone, believing to most likely be one of his parents or either both of them. There's also a clip in one of the other episodes where there's somebody talking to some sort of recording saying that I will have my legacy carry on. My son will carry on my legacy. So I definitely feel like this could be some sort of connection to Wyatt and his family. Because if it isn't, I haven't really seen any other reason for that clip to be there. Watching it over and over again, I haven't seen anywhere else for it to connect to anyone apart from the detective. But still, I haven't really seen any other reason for it to connect to him. Plus, they're talking about an arcade. So I really doubt that it is connected to him. Wyatt also says this during his conversation with Lewis. Maybe possibly Whinny used to be one of Litho's puppets. It would also understand why Whinny was so loyal to Litho in the first place. It would also explain why Owen's drawings had all the red eyes around him. He was possibly used as the next puppet. Maybe possibly Wyatt was also supposed to be a puppet, but things went wrong or things went out of line, which could be why he instead opted to use Sarah as his next puppet. This is a theory I'm a little bit more confident in, but this is still up in the air. But I do want to put this into like the consideration of what happened. Because if I'm being honest, I'm really curious about Whinny. Whinny is one of my favorite characters. I did say that Ribbon Dancer is my favorite, but it's Starlight, Ribbon Dancer, and Whinny, who are my three favorites. And we basically know nothing about Whinny, so I'm really trying to like find something out here. Another minor theory is that Nightlight might be a bit younger than the others. I don't know, she just seems like she's a little bit younger than everybody else. Yes, I know Lewis, Sarah, and Oliver are like in their 20s, but maybe Nightlight was like 18, young, 17. And if we're adding on to the fact of the theory that Nightlight might have been one of the bullies, maybe she is pretty young, for all we know. Also, another thing on more of the fact that they said that employees were dying more frequently. Not every employee that died was stuffed into an animatronic. We do see that in episode 4 when they're interviewing Glory, that the interviewee ended up dying because of Glory, or at least hinted towards it. Because Whinny does appear after that saying like, oh, they're not going to be happy about this. So I that's more so like just a, Litho does come over and say like, oh, they're not going to be happy about this. So it's definitely something that most likely happened. Another thing that's more confirmed rather than just being a theory is the fact that the collector has been under the establishment before or since the 1980s. I'm pretty sure the person who comes out of the collector is Agnes, and that is where Litho decided to store his brother. He even came out asking if that was really Litho and how he changed over these years. And also asked what year or century they were in. So again, a more confirmed theory rather than a non-confirmed theory.